Collision Course is back. Schedule B on Revolution Radio every Saturday night, 6 to 8 p.m. You get outer space. You get honest answers, real researchers, truthful answers, and a place to engage with questions. Take part in the discussion. Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com hosts Collision Course every Saturday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Time.
I'm Reverend Medium Tracy Lockwood, and I'd like to invite you to join me as I discuss life from a medium's perspective. I'll be talking about insights that I've gained through readings, with topics like your guides, angels, animal communication, past lives, our transition, and the afterlife. We'll take a deeper look at the metaphysical meanings of symbols and totems, and I'll give you some practical exercises to help you develop your own natural psychic ability. Join me on From a Medium's Perspective.
Do you or someone you know suffer from poor circulation, shortness of breath, or chest pains? Are you looking for a more natural solution to help overcome these problems? People tell us that after just a few months taking Extendivite, their doctors have noticed unexplainable improvements in their overall health. For more information, visit heartdrop.com or call 1-877-928-8822.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
And tell them Nighthawk sent you, because if you call this number and tell them Nighthawk sent you, you'll get $5 off your first order at extendivite.com. Thank you. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Well, it's time to stumble down the road with host Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff and co-host Jenny Vaught as they carry stones, dig holes, and wield their shovels along the way. On Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. This is not a seated event as they talk, run, stumble, carry, dig, drag, laugh, fight, sing and pray, dance and kick and scream, and oftentimes fall. Hey, is that a stone or a buffalo check? Now, here are your hosts for the next 2 hours on carrying stones and digging holes. But I won't be there.
The hell I won't.
Hey, whoa. All right. I think that's better. There was a little bit of crazy feedback, but I think it's all settled down. Hey, everybody. Hey, listeners, for Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yes, it's carrying stones and digging holes once again. I'm your host, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, and you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can look at the main page. We're listener supported, so we have a funding page, and you can just donate to us. You can buy heirloom seeds, all kinds of amazing ways that you can support us. All of us volunteer to bring you, good information and interesting people with interesting walks of life. All of our hosts have something unusual and unique. So go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and I believe that we're also being heard on the TuneIn app. So you can check us out there as well. You can download the TuneIn app. Also, you can find me and Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And if you go to the schedule link, you click on Schedule A. I'm in the Studio A, Schedule Studio A. And you go down to the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you will see a big bee with pollen on its legs flying towards a flower, and that would be my area. Click on that, and there's a web page about me and information, and also a way that you can contact me if you wish. So today I'm kind of excited. I booked this person a while ago. I found out about the organization, I don't know, 2 years ago. I don't know how long exactly it's been, because I took the test that they had on their site, their survey that they were doing. And the website is consciousnessandcontact.org and experiencer.org. And I today have Rey Hernandez, who is the co-founder of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, and Rey is also the co-author of Beyond UFO. And so, yes, today we're going to be talking about extraterrestrials and UFO and information and people and all kinds of different things. And we're going to find out more about the foundation. So it's kind of an exciting day because everybody knows that I'm really hip with extraterrestrials. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Rey come on and talk to us about about himself, any more information that he wants to offer us. And then also I'm going to have him discuss his past and how he's gotten to his work that he does now. So Rey, are you with me? Rey? Are you there? Let me see. Rey, can you hear me? I can't hear you, Rey. Okay. Let's see. Hold on one moment, please. Let's see what's going on. Oh, all right. Rey, can you hear me? I can't hear you. Let me just take a look. Oh, I hear something.
Hello, testing,
hey.
Testing.
All right, we got you. Woohoo!
Okay, fantastic.
All right. Well, sometimes it's a trick, It's I always try to prepare people before the show, especially when they haven't been on a show like this, and because there's a lot of work necessary in order to get you actually on, so people can hear you.
Well, we're just trying to gear folks to understand that we live in a multiverse, and sometimes non-3D reality interferes.
Exactly. Yeah. Especially with those of us who live in mostly a non-3D reality.
Yes.
Most of the time. Okay, so can you talk to our guests if you want to add any more information about yourself, like biologically or your bio, and then also talk to us and tell us how your experience and how you got to where you're at and doing the work that you're doing now.
Okay. Just to understand, how long is the format, Bridgette, for the show?
It's 2 hours.
2 hours?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Okay, a little bit about my background. I went to Rutgers College. I went to Cornell for a master's, and I went to the University of California at Berkeley for a PhD. And so I was highly scientific, rational materialist, and now I'm an attorney. So I had zero conception of or understanding or knowledge or even interest about spiritual issues, about ethereal issues, paranormal, UFOs, NDEs, consciousness, none of these things. I believe that when I died, my physical body would be buried, and that's it. Okay. And anytime anything that was strange, paranormal related, I would, might listen to it just for entertainment, but that would be it. So in March of 2012, My wife, who was born and raised in Mexico, she was then a hardcore Catholic. We had an experience with our 15-year-old Jack Russell Terrier, who became totally paralyzed. Previous to that, for about 2 years, she had very severe arthritis. She wasn't running, she wasn't jumping, and she would walk very, very gingerly. She was taking Viagra for her heart. And diuretics to flush out the excess liquids in her body. So she was like, if you can imagine, like a 90-year-old lady in your house. And so, but she was a member of our family, and we loved her dearly, and we wanted to give her the best quality of life that was possible. So on March 4th, actually March 3rd, 2012, on Saturday at 3 p.m., our dog became totally paralyzed. And so immediately I called our vet and I explained to him the symptoms of what she was having. And he explained that most likely she had a cerebral hemorrhage, and that and because of her physical conditions that she was previous to that, we made an arrangement to bring her to the office the next day to euthanize her. Obviously, he would check her over, and if nothing changed, he would euthanize her. So my wife had just come from a 3-day Catholic meditation retreat. Basically, it's a prayer retreat for 3 days. And when she came at 8 o'clock, like half hour before she became paralyzed, I told her what had happened, and I showed her Nana, and immediately, she started crying, and the whole night she began to pray. Okay, she began to pray for angelic intervention. And so we went to sleep, and at 6 o'clock, the dog woke us up. She was barking, and we checked her out, and we noticed that she was still paralyzed. So I went back to sleep, and my wife carried her down the stairs. And so when she got to the living room, she saw an object in our living room, and she describes it as an upside-down U, roughly about 1.5 feet in height, half a foot in, or maybe a foot wide, like an upside-down U. And it was sort of metallic silverish, but it was phasing in and out of our dimension. And then she began to pray, and then all of a sudden these lights, like a laser light, beamed on her. And then it was shooting white fluorescent light from the side. And so at that point, she ran upstairs, not because she was scared, but she wanted me to see her angel as well, because she always believed in God, and I was a total atheist. And so she hauled me out of bed, and naturally I was very upset Sunday in the morning, being woken up, and she wouldn't tell me what it was. And so then we both went downstairs, and when we got to the living room, all of a sudden, my wife and our dog disappeared. And then something took over my consciousness. I had like tunnel vision, where all around me was all darkened. I could only see like a little tunnel where I was able to see. And that was where this other object that I saw, and what it looked like, it looked like sort of like a rectangle that was about 2.5 feet wide by 3/4 of a foot in height, but it didn't have any external edges because it was pure energy, and it was radiant, just like you're watching a mirage. You know how it moves in the desert of Mirage. It was multicolored. Every color was imaginable was moving around, and it was semi-translucent, not a lot, but just a little bit. And then, as I said before, I didn't care that my wife was not there. It didn't even come to my mind, okay? I basically looked at that object, I squinted at it, and I waved my hand at it, and I said, bullshit. This is what you got me up for this crap? And then I turned around, and I walked up the stairs, and then I went to bed. I put my hand on my chest, and I was immediately knocked out. Then 45 minutes later, I woke up, and I was like, I said, oh my God, what the hell just happened, And I ran down the stairs, and then poof, my wife was like in the middle of the living room, like reappeared again. And she was dancing in the middle of the living room saying, the angels cured her, the angels cured her. And the dog was running around our living room. like a little teenager. Okay. And
Oh, I lost you. Where'd you go? Ray?
yes, can you hear me?
Oh, now I can hear you again. Okay.
Okay. And
so
what I was saying,
the puppy was running around, so that's
running
where we lost
around.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, puppy was running around, and the way I explained it, it was like an atom bomb shoots off in your brain, and then all of a sudden I'm asking my wife, where were you all those 45 minutes? She goes, what 45 minutes? What are you talking about? And then she explained it to me that she had gone down the stairs. She looked down and the dog started running around and she was celebrating. I said, but look at the time. It's like 7:05. A whole hour, a little bit less than an hour had passed. Actually, it was 45 minutes altogether that she was gone. And so then she says, no, I was here the whole time. And it wasn't until 6 months later that someone explained to me the concept of missing time, that I had no idea what this was. Okay. And that it's common among many experiencers. And so then she told what she saw. And then I told her what I saw. She said, well, I didn't see that. I said, well, you didn't see it because you were gone. You weren't there, And so it was like this back and forth. It was total chaos, total confusion. But at the same time, it was celebration because our dog was totally healed. And to me, I didn't believe her angel story. I couldn't explain what it was because, again, remember, I was not religious, And then so immediately after this joint experience, I then went to the radio and I typed in paranormal because I thought, this is somehow paranormal related. And then I also typed in UFO because she said in Spanish, que parecía una nave. It looked like a little craft. Okay. And so, then I said maybe, but UFOs are things that happen outside the home and they're very big things. This is inside our home, And so it was total chaos, total bedlam. And for the next 2 months, I basically spent every minute of my waking hour that I wasn't working on the internet, trying to find out what the hell is going on, right? And then lo and behold, 2 months later, the dog woke up my wife at 3:30 in the morning. My wife goes with her downstairs. The dog was still like a little puppy. She was jumping on the front door, which she never does, because to go to do her necessities, she's going through the back door. So my wife opens the front door and she goes down with her. And then, she looks up and she sees this big, gigantic UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, i.e. some people call them UFOs, okay? But UFOs for a lot of folks signify just a pure physical object that they're seeing. And the vast majority of people are not seeing crafts like saucer-shaped type of things. They're seeing almost everything else except that. And so, but my wife did see an object that looked like the Goodyear blimp. It was huge, and it had she says, oh, my angels came and visited me last night. They came in a beautiful angelic craft that had stained glass windows all around it, on the edges of it. And I'm like, get more information. Where was it? What direction? And she was pointing it, that sort of thing. And I said, well, draw it for me. And what she drew basically was like a Goodyear blimp, except it was very different. And so then that's when I first, discovered that what she saw, was what people are calling a UFO. Okay. And then a month later, she went to Mexico for an entire month, my daughter and her. And there, on several occasions, she called down her angels. Okay, a lot of people call it CE5. Okay, I prefer the term human-initiated contact experience. And every time my wife did this, these UFOs would appear. Twice it was with family members and friends, and I interviewed them, and then they verified it. One time it was over the airport of Veracruz Airport, which is not too far away where she was staying, and the airport traffic totally stopped for a couple hours because of this UFO was hovering right above the airport. And there was a story in the local newspaper. People took video of it. So it was confirmed. My wife didn't know about it. It was after she told me the dates that I went to the internet and I discovered of this incident over the airport, in Veracruz Airport. And so, and then one time she saw these 3 human-looking beings that were like 7 to 8 feet tall, dressed in white monk robes that floated in front of her. And then at a certain distance, they disappeared. And so, for roughly a 6-month period, my wife was having these types of experiences and also paranormal type of experiences. And I wasn't having anything. And then in August, it was late August of 2012, the same year, 2012, I tried to call down the craft that my wife had seen to give these beings my thanks for curing our dog. And so I had seen a video of this man. His name was Prophet Yahweh, where he would be in the middle of the daylight with a little camcorder. He would talk in Hebrew, do like Hebrew praying. And 10 minutes later, this little tiny speck would appear in the sky, and he was tape recording it. So I said to myself, let's give it a try, because I was killing time. I was waiting for a friend outside the house. Then after 15 minutes of basically not praying, but like calling down and meditating with a good lot of love in me for, these beings, this intelligence. And by the way, we don't use the word ET or alien. We use the term non-human intelligence, because that signifies that pretty much we don't know the basics of this phenomenon, and more than likely that these beings might not only be physical, but also might be multidimensional. So in order to cover all aspects, we use the term non-human intelligence. So getting back to the story, after 15 minutes, I said to myself, what a jerk. Here I am calling down a UFO. I'm going nuts. Okay. I need to stop. And then when I look up, it was this big, gigantic object, was literally 5 feet from the roof of my next door neighbor's house. And it went up about 100 meters, like a football field up, and it went like 6 football fields back. It was like 3 blocks long. It went back and tilting at an angle. And it wasn't something that was fully material. What it was thousands and thousands of oblong streaks of light that formed the whole shell of this object. And inside this object was all this white plasma that was streaking and moving around. And it was semi-transparent, where you could see the clouds behind it. Not a lot, but so then all of a sudden I heard a voice in my head. It said, Mommy, was Daddy, you and Mommy have seen UFOs. Next time you see one, you call me, Daddy, right? Don't forget. Now, my daughter had never said that. Okay, but that was what was projected into my mind. So I then went to the window and I called on my daughter. And what is it, Daddy? I said, hurry up, run outside. There's a UFO out here. And she already knew all the stories that had happened with my wife and what happened in our living room, because we would tell all of our friends that came over and visit us. And some of them actually, Scarlett, had you heard your mommy saying this? It says, yeah, So anyway, she runs outside, and now she sees this object. Okay, both of us were not scared. It was like we were watching the 4th of July fireworks. This object was less than 30 feet away from us. So I could have gotten a rock and thrown it and hit the bottom of that object. So anyway, it was like we were being entertained. Then all of a sudden, my friend comes that I was waiting for, and he comes with his wife, which I wasn't expecting, and their daughter, their 16-year-old daughter. So now you had 5 people watching this thing. And so, to make a long story short, there was telepathic communications that took place. The way they got me to leave, okay, was that I thought that I was being attacked by thousands of mosquitoes. And so I grabbed my daughter's hand and I said, come inside. These mosquitoes are killing me. And once we get inside, I'm telling my wife, and my daughter goes to me, Daddy, there were no mosquitoes outside. And it was like the hypnotist snapped his finger, and I woke up from this trance. And then I was fully conscious, and I was like, oh my God, So I ran, I grabbed my video camera, my professional camera, and I ran outside, and poof, nothing was there. So, so that's when I realized why I acted inside that living room, because somehow this intelligence that I was interacting with was put these thoughts inside my mind, just like when I waved my hand at it inside our living room. Same thing happened outside. It totally took over my consciousness. And then, I began to think, how does this work? Here I am, praying to see this entity, this intelligence that my wife was interacting with, and healed our dog. And then 15 minutes later, it shows up, right next to me, 30 feet away, And then and that's when I began to have literally almost 2 years of nonstop paranormal experiences. And we're talking major, major experiences. And I'll skip over, one of them dealt with my own spirituality, how they gave it to me. So I could skip over that. But let me jump over to May of 2013. This is how the organization got started. In May of 2013, I was driving my car into downtown Miami at 8:30 in the morning in the middle of a traffic jam. Now, mind you, I was having since September of 2012, or early September of 2012 to that day, May of 2013, almost nonstop, paranormal type of experiences. And my wife too, but mainly myself at that point. And so all of a sudden, I'm listening to this radio interview of this guy who was in this film school learning how to be a cinematographer. And he was talking about that he had done liposuction, and he was making a video documentary how he was turning the liposuction fat into statues, little small statues, and like art, doing wax fat art. And then and so I was listening to that interview on public radio station, and all of a sudden I'm not in my car anymore. I don't have a body. I'm just pure mind. And everything was black. There was like nothing around me. I couldn't see anything. I was just like a thought. Okay. And then that lasted for about a couple of minutes. And then all of a sudden, I'm inside a huge, gigantic wheel. Okay. If you could imagine like a Ferris wheel that's 10 times the size of a normal Ferris wheel, and you're inside in the middle, and you're looking up, and getting this image of this Ferris wheel that's slowly moving around. And the Ferris wheel had spokes. Now, inside each of these different spokes are what I now call a contact modality. And let me define that. The contact modalities are all the different ways that humans are piercing the veil and having contact with non-human intelligence. Okay. For example, if you can imagine like a cart that has the spoke in the middle. Okay. So I'm in the middle there and I'm looking out. And in one part of the spoke was near-death experiences. In another part was out-of-body experiences. Another part was UFO contact experiences. Another one was people that see and communicate with what they perceive to be ghosts or spirits. Another one was channeling. Another one was remote viewing. Another one was hallucinogenic journeys. Another one was the image of someone meditating and poof, they pop out of their body. Okay. So and on and on and on. These were visually being shown to me like little movies inside each of these different spokes. And then it wasn't a voice, but it was straight information that was put inside my consciousness. And it says, these are all the different ways that humans are, communicating with us. Okay. They are studying all of these different ways as separate and distinct phenomenon. But in fact, it's all one phenomenon. And the glue that's holding it all together, humans are calling it consciousness. But in fact, it's the very fabric of our reality. Okay. And then it gave me instructions. It said, you need to inform humanity of the relationship between us, the spirit world, and consciousness. Okay. You need to inform humanity of the relationship between us, the spirit world, and consciousness. And there's two factors that you need to understand. This is not about you making money, becoming, filthy rich. Number two, you're going to be needing help, and you need to get individuals with minimal ego. And then, poof, I was back in my body again in the middle of a traffic jam. that I was perceiving I was gone for 20 to 30 minutes, but that man was still there talking about his liposuction and his art fat, and it didn't skip a beat, like there was no time that had passed. So they had literally taken me, my consciousness out of my reality, outside of space-time, and they put me back, my body, or my consciousness back into my body, in the middle of this traffic jam with no time gone. Needless to say, I freaked the hell out, okay? Because even though I was having all of these paranormal experiences, this is something totally, totally different, you know? And I remember calling another experiencer, the only experiencer I was communicating with, and I told her. And she said, well, I've heard of a lot of experiencers that have had something similar to that, of their consciousness being taken out to another reality, but nothing like what you've been given, you know? And then, she settled me down. She said, pull to the side. And I said, I couldn't. I'm in the middle of a traffic jam. I'm in the middle lane, you know? And so, but that's not the interesting part. The interesting part was when I got home late that afternoon, I got an email from Mary Rodwell. And for the individuals out there that do not know who Mary Rodwell is, she is probably the individual that has worked the most with UFO-related contact experiencers. She's a therapist, a certified therapist, not hypnotherapist. We're talking about a psychologist that does psychological counseling in Australia. And so she has assisted more than 3,000 individuals that have had UFO-related contact experiences. And she's written several books about this phenomenon. So I got an email from her. It started like this. It says, Dear Ray, I'm sorry I'm responding to an email that you had sent me 6 months ago, but it just popped up on my computer today. Okay. And so what had happened 6 months ago in October of 2012, I had no one to talk to. I was having all of these crazy experiences. You think that you're crazy, but my entire family have had, similar experiences, not anywhere near to the extent that I was having. But I knew that my entire family was not crazy, So I wanted someone to talk to. So I sent out an email to a lot of very famous names in ufology, okay? And it was only 2 people that responded back, okay? But Mary was responding to this email that I had sent back in October of 2012, and this was now May of 2013. So immediately I got on the internet and I responded back and I said, well, you ain't seen nothing yet. In these 6 months, these are all the crazy stuff that have happened. And this happened today. So then she says, oh my God, Ray, we need to talk. And so she showed me how to use Skype. I never even used it back then. And we talked till like 1 a.m. And so then I told her, I need to get some sleep. It's 1 o'clock in the morning here. I need to work tomorrow. And so the next day at 9:30 in the morning, I got a phone call. And it started, hello, is this Rey Hernandez? I says, yes, who's this? Dr. Rudy Shields. And I go, who? Rudy Shields is an emeritus professor of astrophysics at Harvard University. He was the one that many years ago said that Stephen Hawking was totally wrong about black holes. And Rudy's version turned out to be correct. He also was a dear friend of the late Dr. John Mack, who was a Harvard psychiatrist at the Harvard Medical School, who wrote several books about people that have had UFO contact. In the beginning, he had received cases from Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs. These were abduction type of cases. But then when individuals that were fear-based, but then once he started to talk with individuals independently on his own that came to him, he saw that what they were dealing with, individuals that were having profound psychological changes for the better. People became more consciously aware. They became more spiritual, more ecologically friendly. They were given messages from this non-human intelligence. They were being brought to other multidimensional realities. It's like all of a sudden, once he was not tainted by these abduction-related type of hypnotic regression people, and he actually worked with individuals on his own, he saw that it was something much, much more complicated. So Rudy was one of the few PhD academics that supported Dr. John Mack because Harvard wanted to expel him. Even though he was a tenured professor at the medical school, Harvard University was saying, this guy's going to tarnish our reputation, talking about all this crazy stuff, And so what had happened was that Dr. John Mack had approached Rudy to ask him, he says, Rudy, many of these people are being taken to other realities, like a multiverse. Is there such a thing as a multiverse? And then Rudy told him that, yes, the vast majority of theoretical physicists are now adherents to a multiverse theory, that in fact, we don't live in one reality. We live in multiple realities. It's much more complicated than that. But basically, he was the one that informed Dr. Mack about the topic of consciousness and about the topic of a multiverse. And so when it came time for Harvard trying to kick Rudy out, Rudy was one of the people that testified to support Dr. John Mack. So that's how this man called me, because Mary Rodwell had told him about my experiences. And then he then called me the very next day at 9:30 in the morning. So then he began to explain the science and physics of consciousness and how it might work. And that what had happened to me was an explanation of Dr. Edgar Mitchell's quantum hologram theory of consciousness. He said, Ray, write down this telephone number. And I wrote it down. And he says, this is the telephone number of my mentor. So I said, well, who's your mentor? And then he goes, Dr. Edgar Mitchell. And I'm going to give Edgar a call immediately after our conversation. I'm going to tell him what we spoke about, but you need to talk about him with him yourself. So I knew who Dr. Edgar Mitchell was. For those folks that do know who he is, he was Apollo 14 astronaut who was the sixth man on the moon. Okay, he also had an experience out in space, a somatic type of experience where he was received knowledge that we're all interrelated, that there's no separation between us with everything. It was instantly he knew everything, and then all of a sudden it was taken away. And these are very, very common experiences for near-death experiencers and for out-of-body experiencers. And so when Edgar returned, he was like, what the hell just happened to me? And he began to research it. And what he found out that in ancient India, they call this experience a samadhi type of experience. And so then he began to study consciousness. And he began to study it from a scientific perspective because he was a scientist. He had a PhD in aeronautical engineering from MIT. And so he founded in 1972, a year after he returned from the moon, an institute that would begin to scientifically study what is consciousness. And that's the Institute for Noetic Sciences. And then Edgar then publicly started talking about consciousness at conferences. He wrote a book in 1973 about consciousness and the paranormal, how it's all interrelated. It was a very thick book. It had like over 650 pages. And then he grew up in Roswell, and that was the location of that supposed UFO crash. And when he returned from the moon, all these people talked about that UFO craft, all these old timers that he knew because he grew up in Roswell. So it might have been not the man, but maybe the wife or the children that spoke with him personally to verify a lot of what went on in Roswell. And so then he talked about it. And then Gordon Cooper, an an astronaut in, I believe it was Gemini, one of the first missions of our astronauts. He had several experiences. One of them that he was on Air Force Base testing the latest model of these craft, these airplanes, these supersonic airplanes. They were testing it because he was a test pilot. All of a sudden, he mentioned this little tiny craft that plops down right in the desert. It was captured on video. He saw it. He supervised the whole video developing. It was sent off to some spies that came directly from Washington, D.C. So then he started publicly talking about that experience and about how other pilots, including himself, had seen these UFOs over Europe when they were in the either the Air Force or the Navy. I forgot which one he was in. And so then he came out publicly and joined Edgar. So here is Edgar Mitchell, a man who was sixth man on the moon, started the world's premier institute to study consciousness scientifically, and then began talking about UFOs and the paranormal. So I call him up later that afternoon, and he invites me to his home the very next day. Now, mind you, this is 2 days after this experience. So I was at his home for more than 6 days, and that's where this organization got started. Okay, with Dr. Rudy Shields, the Harvard astrophysicist, Edgar Mitchell, with Mary Rodwell, and myself. And so what we decided to do was that Edgar knew, and Rudy knew, and Mary knew that all of these paranormal experiences that people were having, that if you've seen UFOs and have had contact with UFO intelligence, that more than likely you're going to have an out-of-body experience. More than likely you're going to be having paranormal experiences in your home. More than likely, many people are going to be getting telepathic communications. More than likely, people are calling down this intelligence and seeing these objects in the sky, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Near-death experiences. There was a speculation that many of these experiencers had near-death experiences. However, in order for us to be able to compare these different, what we now call contact modalities, we had no data on the people that have had UFO-related contact experiences. Well, what we had at that time were basically thousands of people that have written books about their UFO contact experiences, and we had lots of tape stories that were on the internet, on YouTube by that time, of people's experiences, but we really had no comprehensive, multi-language, worldwide, quantitative study of this phenomenon. And so that's what we did in 2013. At the end of 2013, we began an organization. This organization has had numerous PhD scientists that were working with us. And actually, some of them are members of our board of directors. And we also brought in some of the researchers in this field. People like Mary Rodwell, obviously one of our co-founders, Kathleen Marden. She's written several books about UFOs, and she herself is a contact experiencer. Barbara Lamb, again, has written several books of this phenomenon, and she's a contact experiencer. We had Dr. Leo Sprinkle, who was a PhD academic in psychology, written several books about this phenomenon, and he was the first academic to actually publish an academic article on UFO contact experiencers. And we had PhD physicists, we had PhD neuroscientists, PhD psychologists, medical doctors, et cetera, et cetera. So we all volunteered to undertake this 5-year academic research study. And then the result was we published this 820-page book titled Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence, which is on Amazon. And you can get a free copy of Chapter 1 for our book in our website, consciousnessandcontact.org. So let me take a break here. And you could begin to ask me questions, Bridgette.
I'm very good. That's very good. You just ran with it. You had a lot to say. I like it. and all the people are liking it. I have people that Skype me while my show's on, and they're always like surprised at my guests. They're like, wow, look, I never knew about that guy. Or
Yes.
It's exciting information. Okay. So, I just was like totally into your story, and there was some stuff that was going on that I was actually listening to in the background. So I don't know if it'll actually show up, on the record, but they sent out 3 signals, like high sharp signals. And then there was some other stuff that was included in the background while you were talking. So I was also kind of keying into, the what you call the non-human intelligence, or, it could be AI as well or whatever else. But that they were like on the line as well. They're listening, they're involved in this conversation. So just wanted to put that out there.
I have several friends of mine that are, intuitives, whatever you might want to call it, people that are tapped into information fields. And they've gotten that and a lot more as well in terms of myself and other people involved with free.
Yeah. So, and that's how I kind of found you guys is, my listeners know that I'm a star kid. I came in the second wave. I'll be 50 on Tuesday. And so it's always exciting for me when I can have other people on that have experiences and who have what I call the duty, where you're living in kind of a different kind of dimensional experience, multi-dimensional experience while you're trying to participate like in the 3D. So it's awesome to be around other people who have that kind of stuff. I like listening, to what's going on behind or under the surface as well.
Well, one of the individuals that's written up in our book, he's a medical doctor. And this person over a 2-year period actually lived in a multidimensional reality for 2 years, out of body wise. He would be meditating. He basically took 2 years of his life, before this person started medical school. And this person was out of body 18 hours a day. And he lived in that realm. And this is a medical doctor. This is someone that's saving lives every day. So you're preaching to the converted now. Beforehand, before 2012, I always thought that you were crazy.
That's okay. I've been dealing with people who think I'm crazy my entire life. Having had the experiences I've had, even just pretending to be normal was tough. Like seeing what humans do. Oh, they sit at a desk with a pencil,
Now the way I see it is that we've been blessed because we've been given this opportunity to see and feel and touch and to understand that our reality is not what it is. It's so much more complicated, and that we, in fact, are eternal spiritual beings living in a multiverse and even much more complexities than that. If we want to go that rabbit hole, we can do it, but so I just feel it now is that, we've been blessed and many others have not.
Yeah, I do think, though, a majority of the planet is contacted because there isn't anybody that I don't work with, whether they're, still completely, kind of unconscious of what's going on. But I always see in their field that they're having, some sorts of multi-dimensional beings or physical extraterrestrials or different kinds of things that are actually in their field. They're just not aware of it. And they haven't really, in a conscious way been able to experience it, but it's still happening to them. It's still in their field. It's still a point of energy, or like in shamanism, they call the assemblage point. The assemblage point just has to be moved just a little bit. And then they would notice that, these similar experiences are happening to them, probably have been happening to them for their whole life. But I think that pretty much everybody here on some way, shape, or form, whether they're aware of it or not, are having those experiences.
Yes, no, I totally agree with that. For example, after I saw that big, gigantic craft, over about a 2-year period, almost everybody I met, actually lasted 9 months where I could feel that whether someone was an experiencer or not. Someone that's either had an out-of-body experience, a near-death experience, had seen ghosts and spirits, whatever. And I would approach these people, start a conversation, and lo and behold, the person that's fixing my lock out of my door, telling me about, he sees ghosts and spirits all the time. This lady at the supermarket, she's had multiple UFO contact experiences. Someone at my wife's church has had multiple out-of-body experiences, on and on and on. That lasted for about 6 months, where I could just feel the energy off of people. And then what happened was I still continued to talk to people about, these experiences. And lo and behold, either they or someone that they know has had one of these contact modalities. So it's a worldwide phenomenon. But the key here is that very few people talk about it openly. And that's what we found out of the 6,000 and change people that took our surveys. The vast majority stated that they never spoke to anyone except a close family member of these experiences.
Yeah, I was lucky, and I think that I was actually, when I was launched into this reality, I was put into a family of old bloodlines of shamans and healers and medicine type people. So I grew up, my grandmother on my mom's side was actually like a prophet, which I consider the same as remote viewing, a prophet of the Pentecostal church and an exorcist. So I grew up kind of lucky in a way, because when my family got together, they talked about everything like it was real. The Bigfoots are real, the vampires are real, these people are real, these multi-dimension beings are real, which helped in my experience, in my development, being pretty aware and awake myself. But I was lucky, and it's just now that people are starting to, step forward and actually start to talk about these things. They're not considering themselves loony anymore. There's no mental hospitals they can be stuck in by their family. And they're starting to kind of, own their experiences, which is a good thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's, I myself went through a period where I could not take it anymore. And I began to drink over a 5-day period. And this was after they showed me, aspects of reincarnation, and these two ladies began to channel in front of me via Skype, these two very well-known ladies. And all of a sudden, they were channeling this intelligence to give me information to give to someone else, a third party. And one would start, the other one would finish, and the other one would start, the other one would finish. And that went on, and all the information was totally confirmed. And then it talked about past lives and things of that sort. And I was like freaking out, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I began to drink. And then whatever this intelligence that is interacting with me, then they sent me, what I call a human angel to intervene. And it's someone that's had all these major experiences as well, that it's a very, very lengthy story, but basically it snapped me out of drinking. And it got me back to my mission, but I understand that there's a lot of people go to psychiatrists, and many of the shrink says, look, you're normal, you don't need pills, and the person is like, God damn it, I wanted a freaking pill to make this shit to stop, and other people are given pills, and they become like, semi-comatose because it dampens these experiences, but it's part of our reality.
Yeah, my mom was, I believe that, my mom came from a genetic bloodline of, powerful medicine people type thing. And so my mom was basically put into by her husband, her young husband. She was put into a mental facility far away from home. This was back in the 60s. And then the mental hospital didn't notify my grandmother or her family about that they were giving her electroshock, and medications, and basically, frontal lobotomized her in multiple ways, and she just never was the same person. And then after they were done doing that to her, the family's husband annulled the marriage and And then they contacted my grandmother 6 months later to have her send money so they could put my mom on a bus. And none of my family knew where my mom was at for 6 months. But I believe that, my family also were contact people, that were contacted and also had, gifts and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, for some of the people, they've had a really hard time in the past. So it's really good that now people can be at least a little bit more open. And also with the internet, more people that have these kinds of experiences can, connect with other people, which helps them to not feel like they're so crazy.
Correct. Well, let me go over. This is a good transition.
Oh, here, hold on 1 second. We're going to go to commercial.
Okay.
So can you just give us, this is Rey Hernandez. He's my guest today. He's the co-founder of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation. He's also one of the co-authors of Beyond UFO. Their work can be found at experiencer.org or consciousnessandcontact.org. And the first hour, we've been talking about contact modalities. Ray's been inspiring us with his awakening experiences and the healings that have taken place. So he says that their foundation and himself, they like to talk about ETs and AIs and all these other, other than human intelligence, and they like to call it the non-human intelligence. And so now we're going to head to commercial. We're going to be in commercial for, as soon as I hear the noise, we'll go to commercial. And then we'll be in commercial for about 4 minutes, and we'll be back at the top of the hour. Okay, everybody, mute, take a break, 4 minutes.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Hello, all you good-looking people out there in Revolution Radio. This is Mario. I invite you to join me Thursdays at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other. It's a show about you, it's a show about me, but ultimately it's a show where we try to have a little bit of fun. We discuss important topics, and we do our best to be apolitical. So I invite you, put on your favorite pair of comfy sweats, your smoking jacket, and grab a beverage of your choice, and join me Thursday evenings at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other on Revolution Radio.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
From the astral realms to the physical plane, the halls of power to the walls of home, the multiverse to the innerverse, all will be haunted by the ghost in the machine. I am Steve Zerloff, the ghost in the machine. Mondays, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Studio B. Exclusively here on Revolution.Radio.
This is Barbara DeLong, host of Nightlight Radio, inviting you to join me on a cosmic journey, exploring a metaphysical montage of spiritual material, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between, including spiritual readings for those who seek enlightenment. Let Nightlight provide you with equal measure of light, love and laughter, insight, wisdom, and inspiration. Monday nights, 10 to 12 p.m. Eastern, right here on Studio B, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com.
Do you or someone you know suffer from poor circulation, shortness of breath, or chest pains? Are you looking for a more natural solution to help overcome these problems? People tell us that after just a few months taking Extendivite, their doctors have noticed unexplainable improvements in their overall health. For more information, visit heartdrop.com or call 1-877-928-8822.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
And tell them Nighthawk sent you, because if you call this number and tell them Nighthawk sent you, you'll get $5 off your first order at extendivite.com. Thank you. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
All kinds of it's coming back up. Hold on a second. Oh, okay, so we're back on. All right, so we're back on for the second hour of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. And my guest today for the second hour, which was the same as the first hour, is Rey Hernandez. He's the co-founder of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, co-author of Beyond UFO. And we are continuing the conversation that we've been having. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com is our website. And you can go on there and you can listener supported. So please give us some funding and help us with our funding to keep our network jamming along, because we are listener supported. Also, you can go on there and you can go to schedule, click on Schedule A. And you can go down to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you'll see the bee and the flower, and that's me. Click on there. You'll see some information about myself and contact information. All right. So, Rey, where did you leave off that you wanted to continue on with? And we're going to just let you roll.
Okay. What I wanted to talk about is I left everyone that we started this 5-year academic research study. The people involved were a combination of both PhDs as well as researchers in this field. And so I want to go over what are the research findings, because many of our research findings totally contradict what is circulating in the ufology field. And the main reason for that is because the vast majority of mainstream ufology are materialist. They really do not incorporate models of the paranormal, models of consciousness in discussing their phenomenon. They're mainly focused on nuts and bolts aspects of this phenomenon. And so our first major finding, again, which totally contradicts what's circulating on the internet and all of these ufology conferences, is that the overwhelming number of UFO-related contact experiencers, okay, mainly see their experiences as positive, okay? We asked over 20 questions to determine whether the experience was positive or negative or neutral. And we ask that question in many, many different ways. Okay. Now, if you go to the internet, all you get to see is these images of these little grays experimenting on you. They might be carving you up, all of this negative stuff. But again, these types of images are not presented in the true reality of what really is going on. Okay. Initially, 38% of these individuals viewed their experiences as mainly negative. Okay. Now, why? Because if all of a sudden you see a being right in front of you, or you're seeing a UFO and you're having some information placed in your brain, okay, or you're being taken to another reality, another location, or if you physically see one of these entities, and remember, these entities are many of them are physical, but the vast majority of them are non-physical type of experiences. So you're going to be traumatized for a long time, okay? Even though if the experience might have been neutral, you're still going to be traumatized. But what had happened was that the vast majority of these individuals, they don't just have one or two experiences. Over time, they have many, many experiences. In fact, over 40% of the individuals that took our survey have had more than 20 different contact experiences. Okay. Now, over time, also, these experiences become more positive. Okay. For example, for many, many people, their experiences might be seeing a small little gray, or having what is commonly called an abduction. You're, in your bed sleeping, and all of a sudden you wake up paralyzed, and you're on some type of a flat object, and you're seeing these little tiny grays inspect you. Okay, checking you over with a big light or something like that. Okay, then you only get glimpses of this. You get a couple of minute glimpses of this, and then that's it. That's the only thing you can remember. So people are totally traumatized. Also, a lot of people wake up and they see, different types of non-human intelligence. Again, just for a very, very short time, usually less than a minute. And then that's it. That's all you remember. So naturally, people are very, very scared of these things because it doesn't jive with their reality. Okay. But then later on, people, at least the ones that have had quote unquote abduction type of experiences, all of a sudden, they're allowed to walk around the UFO craft. They're allowed to actually operate a ship. Okay. Now, again, those type of people that have had abduction type of experiences were the vast minority of the people that have taken our survey. In fact, 2/3 of the people that have had contact, UFO-related contact with non-human intelligence, they've never been abducted. Okay, that's 2/3. So that means all these people talk about abduction this, abduction that. Okay, they are totally missing the point, because they're missing 2/3 of the other people. Also, the people that have had, quote unquote, what is an abduction, okay? 2/3 of these people now, many, many years later, call themselves contactees and not abductees. Why? Because their experiences change. It might have started with seeing these little grays in your living room, and you're, scared the hell out of from these experiences. Then later on, you might have a human-looking being that appears in your living room and says, Alberto, I know you've been thinking lately about what death is like. And Alberto, being in his early 70s, he says, well, let me show you. And it brings him through a near-death experience, what it's like. Brings him to another reality, another multiverse. Okay, similar like to Jodie Foster's movie called Contact. Perfect word for it. And what we found out in our research study was that actually almost double the number of people were brought to a matrix reality than the number of people that have had abduction type of experiences. Okay, almost double the number of people. Okay, and then of the people that have had abduction related type of experiences, 70% of those folks, as I said before, now call themselves contactees and not abductees. The people that are most traumatized are the people that have only had one or two of these experiences. And it's mainly the abductees. For example, if you've only had one or two experiences, and that's it, of like all of a sudden waking up, you see a gray in your living room, or in your bed. The next thing you know, you're paralyzed on a bed, and they're above you checking you out, doing tests or an experiment on you or whatever, you're going to be traumatized for the rest of your life if you've never had any other type of experience, because you just have that memory. But fortunately, for the vast majority of people that have taken our surveys, they've had many, many experiences, and the experiences became more positive, and their perception of their early experiences changed. So it started off as 38% as mainly negative, and then it flipped all the way to like where 85 to 95% of these experiences that are considered mainly positive. Okay. Now, a couple of other factors of this. We've, as I said before, we asked that question more than 20 different ways. One was we straight out asked them, now after, many, how do you consider these experiences? Were they positive, negative, or neutral? Okay. Only 5% said it was negative. We also asked that question for the different type of the people that actually saw a being, physically saw a being. How would you consider your experience with that particular being? Okay. And even for the short grays, it was only 11.5% that stated that their experiences were negative. That's it, 11.5%. The vast majority, I think it was like 60%, said it was neutral. All the rest was positive. Okay. And even for the people that saw a reptilian, and on the internet, they're portrayed as beings that will rape you or rape your wife, eat your children. They're controlling all the government leaders around the world. This is all bullshit that's circulated on the internet. When in fact, 22% of these people said that their experiences with these reptilians were negative. The vast majority were mainly neutral. And there was about 18% said it was mainly positive. Okay. Now, when we went to phase 3, which is the open-ended survey, to find out why these people that had reptilian experiences, those 22%, we're talking now over 400 people. Okay. We're not talking about 2, 3, 4, or 5 people. We're taking over 400 people that had these reptilian experiences. For the other beings, I'll tell you the statistics and the numbers. For those people, the ones that answered mainly negative, it was because they were scared of what this being looked like. All of a sudden, appearing right in front of you is this 8 to 9 foot tall being with a crocodile head that weighs 400 or 500 pounds. It's got a long tail, okay? And how are you going to feel? Okay, you're going to feel totally traumatized, totally intimidated, totally scared, for the rest of your life. Okay, but only 22% said that it was negative. Okay, we didn't get anyone that talked about that these beings that said something bad to them. Okay, it was mainly of what it looked like. Okay, but then many, many other people said, look, it didn't do anything to me. It was just there in front of me staring at me. In the beginning, I was totally scared. I was totally traumatized. But then many, many years upon reflecting upon that experience, I realized that it was a neutral experience. It didn't do anything. It just looked at me. It might have communicating something to me, some thoughts. And we wrote that down in our book, telepathically. And that's it. Okay. So we wound up. In our book is a book just about the English language survey. In all of our surveys, we had over 6,000 responses. But in the English language survey was over 4,200 individuals. We did the cutoff in April of 2017, okay? And the cutoff at that point was 3,200 individuals because we then began to publicize some of the data. So we began to talk about some of our research data, and then we did the cutoff for the analysis. Over 125 countries participated in this. Okay, so we're talking about thousands and thousands of people from all over the world. Okay, we also did a statistical analysis of how all these people responded to these questions. We grouped all the people in the US, all the people in Canada, all the people in the United Kingdom, all the people in mainland Europe, and all the people in Australia and New Zealand. We grouped those together. We did separate categories for all of these geographic regions. And then we looked at how they answered all of these questions, over 700 questions. Almost all of these questions, there was less than a 10% deviation to the response of this question. That means that people were answering the same way to these 700 questions among these 6,000 people from all over the world. So they were answering the same way. And that's another validation for our research study. So anyway, the first major finding was this positive aspects of the experience. Number two, we concluded that the contact experience is overwhelmingly not a physical material phenomenon. Instead, it is a paranormal and psychic phenomenon. And this finding was discussed at length by many pioneers in this field, Dr. Jacques Vallée, Dr. Alan Hynek, Dr. John Mack. All of them hypothesized this more than 30 years ago. Okay. Also, unlike Vallée, Hynek, or Mack, Free has actually confirmed this hypothesis with actual confirmational data. Okay. We discovered that 80% of these individuals were having out-of-body experiences. 67% have had telepathic communications. 50% have had a medical healing by non-human intelligence. 37% have had a near-death experience. 60% have physically seen orbs. More than 50% have been brought to a matrix reality. 95% of these individuals have had paranormal experiences in our home. I could go on and on and on and on with a whole array of different paranormal experiences. And when you add the totality of the experiences, the vast majority of these experiences were not physical. These were paranormal related type of experiences. Okay. So that's number two, that this is mainly paranormal. Yet ufology does not discuss this aspect of it. Okay. Number three, the contact experience is an overwhelmingly transformational experience for the positive. The end result is all of a sudden a new human was developed out of this process. We asked over 60 questions about how they view things now after many years of these experiences. And we found out was that over 85% of these individuals, they became more loving to other humans. They became more ecological, less materialistic, more spiritual. They do not fear death. They know the purpose of their life now. They're more consciously aware. They're less religious. I go on and on and on with these 60 questions. And it's a total transformation of the person. And these are individuals that you would want to be your best friend, your next door neighbor, a confidant, a spouse, okay, a friend, you know. And so for all these people that portray, you know, these experiences as negative, okay, what I say is let it happen all over the world. If it happens all over the world, we would not have war. We would not have economic pillaging of what's taking place with our capitalist society. We would not have poverty. We would not have, like we did in the 20th century, over 100 million people being killed via wars. Okay? It would be a totally different society. Why? Because 85% of these people that have had these experiences, all of a sudden, they change. They became more spiritual, less greedy, less materialistic, more loving to the fellow human being, more ecologically friendly. You know, instead of polluting this planet and destroying it, let's take care of it. Okay? So that's the third major finding. The fourth major finding, and again, this is not something that is discussed or shared within ufology. The fourth major finding is that contact involves a manipulation of space-time. And this in turn leads one to hypothesize that this non-human intelligence that's interacting with us might be multidimensional. Okay? Because if these entities are able to take you out of your reality, you, like a near-death experience, you might be gone for a year or two, but all of a sudden when you return, it's 2 hours after your heart surgery. Okay? Or they might be able to take you to another reality, like in Jodie Foster's movie Contact. And you might be there again for a certain period of time and bring you back, and no time has elapsed. Okay? So these are non-human intelligence with that possess the ability to manipulate space-time, which in turn, by definition, we're dealing with multidimensional intelligence. Now, also, this was pointed out more than 40 years ago, again, by Dr. Jacques Vallée, Dr. Alan Hynek, Dr. John Mack, Dr. Edgar Mitchell, Rudy Shields, so many people that work with free. Okay, they've been talking about this for many, many, many years. However, mainstream materialist ufology still does not understand this, and they don't accept it. Okay, now the main reason why all of this is not known was because no one has ever done the basic research before, the basic study. Okay, now what we're going to be talking about in our second book, volume 2. Okay, we're going to be discussing various theories of the relationship between non-human intelligence, the manipulation of space-time, and our cosmological multiverse. Okay, in other words, what is the interrelationship of consciousness, our cosmology, which is our reality, our multiverse. Okay, consciousness, cosmology, and contact via the contact modalities with non-human intelligence. In other words, can there possibly be a unified theory of consciousness and contact with non-human intelligence? That's going to be the subject of our second book. What are hypotheses, possible explanations that might explain the complexity of our reality? One other item, Edgar Mitchell once told me, he said, Ray, there's so many people out there on the internet acting like they've got all the answers, okay? When in fact, they know nothing. He said, we actually know the equivalent of 1 grain of sand in an entire beach. And my response to Edgar was, and that's just one beach, suggesting if you add in the multiverse, multiple realities, we know nothing. We know absolutely nothing about this phenomenon. That's how complicated it is. But yet, if you go to the internet, you have 1,001 individuals out there acting like they know it all. Okay. In reality, we don't. Okay. Now, in terms of our second book, okay, we are having 2 different volumes for book number 2 and actually book number 3. Okay, book number 1, the people that are being invited to write articles are all PhDs, and from many different fields. We're talking authors from psychology, physics, astrophysics, medical doctors, neuroscience, philosophy, psychology, and again, focusing on these thematic questions. What is the relationship between consciousness or cosmology and contact with non-human intelligence via the contact modalities? Are there hypotheses out there that you might have that might explain the paranormal contact modalities and how it's all interrelated with consciousness and contact with non-human intelligence? Now, all of these individuals that we invited, these scientists, they all are adherents of non-local consciousness. That means that consciousness is independent of our brain, and that our consciousness might exist outside of the physical body or even after death. Okay. And so our second book is going to be for experiencers. Many people again, have been experiencers for many, many, many years. People have received information from channeling, et cetera, et cetera. And what they're going to be writing is a totally separate book, is from the experiencer side, addressing that same question. How can this be explained, possibly? Okay. Now, again, we are seeing these as hypotheses. Just like, for example, here you might have had Dr. Edgar Mitchell passed away a year and a half ago. But for example, most of the people that will be writing chapters for a book, they're all in their 70s, almost all of them. So it's like saying, okay, Rudy Shields or Edgar Mitchell, Edgar was 80 something when he died. So it's okay, you're 80 years old now. You have studied this phenomenon now for 40 or 50 years. You have spoken with some of the most brilliant minds on this topic. If you were to guess what might possibly explain this phenomenon, what would it be? And could you please put that in writing so we could share with the rest of humanity? So if you pass away, we'll have that as your magnus opus, as your explanation to what is going on. So Edgar unfortunately passed away before we were able to do that. But we will be having a chapter of an article that he wrote, which is his most important article, that deals with consciousness and the information fields of our cosmology, and how our universe is actually a multiverse, and how we as humans interact with our multiverse. So that's going to be in there. But most of the other articles are going to be discussing the relationship between consciousness and non-human intelligence. So that's going to be our book. And then finally, we are in the process of developing a documentary. It's going to be a science-based documentary, but we're going to be talking about all the aspects of non-human intelligence and presenting experiencers, people's experiences in a very respectful way. So we're going to be showing to humanity that, look, our reality is not what you think it is. It's much more complicated. And unlike that movie, I don't know if you've seen What the Bleep, okay? But What the Bleep was basically, it's a consciousness-related documentary. We're going to be putting What the Bleep on steroids, because we're going to be injecting the whole aspect of non-human intelligence on top of What the Bleep. And on top of that, we're going to be presenting actual experiencers with their stories to show people that, look, this phenomenon is much more broader than just consciousness, okay? And much more broader than each specific phenomenon of the contact modality, that it includes the integration of all of the contact modalities: UFO contact, NDEs, OBDs, remote viewing, channeling, mystical meditation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Ghosts and spirits, orbs, ESP. Instead of viewing these things separately, that you have to see it as one integrated phenomenon. So, and again, trying to explain the possible hypotheses, scientific hypotheses, such as a multiverse theory, such as the matrix reality theory, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, as possible explanations for this reality. So that's a little bit about more of our organization, the projects that we're doing, and the type of scientific approach that we're taking. So if you have any questions, or any of your audience members, I'm available to address each one.
No, well, the good news is that my audience is really quiet, so it means that they're listening. So there's not a lot of questions, and I don't really have any questions on all of that. I think it's really great. So, when do you think that your documentary will be coming out?
Well, we are working with volunteers. We have a professional documentary crew, a crew that did several Star Trek documentaries. Several are playing in Netflix right now. One is, I believe, is titled "In Search of Spock." It was about Leonard Nimoy, and that's on Netflix right now. And then there's another one titled "The Captains," which is narrated by Captain Kirk. I forgot his name, William Shatner. And there's another one that, again, it was revolved around a story of William Shatner. So they've been working in this field for over 25 years. Both of them are experiencers. Let me just tell you a little bit about their particular story, okay? They went to Cancun for vacation. This is like more than 20 years ago, though they decided to see the pyramids at Chichen Itza, okay? So coming back from Chichen Itza, driving back to Cancun, I think it was at least like a 2-hour drive. And back then, I don't think they had the big highway, the new one that they built. So all of a sudden, it's dusk. The sun is going down. There's a little daylight, okay? And then all of a sudden, there was no cars on the highway. Their headlights of the car and the engine started sputtering. And so he pulled the car over, and he was like, what the hell, you know? And all of a sudden, he sees a very, very large moon object that was coming at them down, from the road, at a distance, okay? And it was getting bigger and bigger because it was coming right at them, okay? Then the next thing they remember is 6 hours later, completely nighttime, like 10 o'clock at night, they were in their bedroom in Cancun, fully clothed, okay? Fully clothed in their beds. And both of them woke up at the same time, and they were like, what the, what, okay? And so, and the wife is an intuitive, okay? Since she was very young from all these experiences. So they're volunteering their services. Today we met with another man who is an animation graphics expert, and he's also an experiencer. He's seen UFOs and had communication with non-human intelligence, and he's also based in Miami. So he's agreed to join us. So in terms of answering your question, when, at least a year from now, more than likely about a year and a half from now. But we've been shooting this for over a year and a half now.
Wow. All right. Well, it's good that there's it's going to be sooner than later.
Yes.
So, okay. So what is, so we're coming into the last 25 minutes. So can you tell us one of the I don't know, craziest, off the charts experience or contact story that you've ever heard? Do you have one of those?
Well, let me tell you the story about my best friend. Okay, he's not my best friend. His name is Alberto Fernandez. Okay, he's 74 years old. Okay, he is a retired DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration agent. Okay. It was after he retired. He was having contact experiences throughout his life. Okay. But the major stuff happened after he got hurt. He was on one of these big, gigantic container ships. And he fell from one of those containers, and he hurt his back. And so he was forced to retire. And it was then that his experiences really took off. And his wife is a PhD psychologist. And their daughter is also a PhD psychologist, and he himself has a master's degree. Okay, so let me tell you a few of his stories. Okay, he is the world's major contact experiencer, but no one knows about him because he's not public. Okay, let me tell you some of his stories. Okay, let me see where we start. When he was raised in rural Cuba, very, very poor. Okay. When he was young, in the Latin American culture, they have the sacred heart of they call it a sacred heart of Christ, that you see usually a picture of Jesus Christ with like a big gigantic heart that's in the middle of him, and then you walk into the living rooms, a lot of the Catholics have that in the middle of the living room. Okay. His family was not Catholic. He never went to church. Okay. But all of a sudden he saw like a sort of like a hologram type of image of this heart that came to him in the middle of the night. And all of a sudden it went straight into his chest. Okay. And he was a young boy when this happened. All of a sudden he started quivering, with energy and, shaking. And it lasted a certain amount of time and it dissipated. Okay, the way you could think of it is sort of like an orb. A lot of people have had orbs that have done that to them. Okay, so that was one of his experience. He also had a near-death experience when he was a teenager. I think he was 16 years old in Cuba. He was jumping off a bridge that river went into the ocean. Okay, but the ocean was right there, right next to that bridge. It was right on the waterfront. And so it was all these kids were jumping off of the bridge. And so he was jumping off of there and going into the water. And then all of a sudden, one of those riptides, I forgot the formal name of it, pulled him out. And then they had these big, gigantic boulders, like these breakers, that were right along the waterfront. And so he kept on being pulled out. Okay. And so he tried to swim, to get back, and he just became so tired. Then when he went to those rocks, the rocks was filled with all that moss and the little spiked corals, and he would just like slip down. So eventually he got pulled out. He got pulled back, where it was a much, much more deeper. And all of a sudden he started to think about his mother. His mother had passed away on childbirth. Okay. And he was raised by family members. So at that point, he was thinking about his mother, and talking to God, Then all of a sudden, he went all the way down. He was at the bottom, and he was still consciousness. He had swallowed all of the water, but he was still conscious. Then all of a sudden, he felt like something pulled him right out of the water from underneath, put him up into the air. And once he got into the air, then he became unconscious, okay? And then the next thing he knew, he felt like he was being dropped, like from 5 to 6 feet up, and he just plopped on the floor. And he was with his shorts, which was all soaking wet. His whole body was soaking wet. He got put on the other side of a 6-lane street, okay? Because the Malecón in Havana had like 3 lanes going westbound, and 3 lanes going eastbound. And so he got put all the way on the other side, soaking wet, and he still had the pain like from being dropped, and he was fully conscious. And he was like, he said he acted as if nothing had happened, like the mind control aspect of it, And all of a sudden he got up and he continued to play. But it wasn't until later on that day that he realized, what had happened to him, and so he had that near-death experience, not a typical near-death experience in the sense that he got physically going to another reality, but he definitely saw himself outside of his body being pulled out under the water. When he got into the air, he was like knocked out. Then he had an experience where he was released, recovering, from his injury. His house was rented at that time, so the DEA had put him and his wife in a hotel, which is right across the street from the airport in Miami, and they were on the top floor of this 20-story hotel building, and all of a sudden the whole building shook as if like a earthquake had happened. The alarms went off. Everybody went outside of their rooms. The windows were shattering, and not shattering, but shaking. So his beeper went off, because of the shaking, and so everyone went back into the room. The announcement said false alarm, and then like a couple of minutes later, it happened again. Okay, the windows in his room began to tremble. The lights were flickering all on and off in his room. All of a sudden, his wife jumped on top of their little baby to cover her because they thought it was an earthquake. Okay, then what happened was the wife got knocked out, put to sleep, and then in front of Alberto appeared a little 3-foot, what is typically called a small gray. Okay, with large head, with large eyes. And he says he kind of sensed that it was female, communicated with him telepathically. It says, this is the last time we're going to be seeing you. We just came back to tell you thank you because you have managed to save our race, And apparently he had been over a 10, 20-year period beforehand waking up paralyzed. And that's when he realized that maybe they were somehow taking his DNA or sperm or whatever, that was what was happening. And after that experience was when he began to have just one experience after another. He began to have contact with different, what he calls masters. Okay. These would be human looking beings. Most of them were dressed in white monk's robes. Only one time he saw what is typically called a Palladian, which is a human-looking being with the blonde hair and the blue eyes, with the blue outfit on. One time that did happen. But most of these experiences were human-looking beings that were dressed in white tunics. And then these beings would bring him to other realities. And let me just give you a couple of these examples. Well, this particular being was a Chinese warlord. He was all heavy and very chubby guy, dressed in a traditional Chinese garb. And he says, my name is, and I forgot the name, but and he says that I lived during this time period, and gave him a date, and he says that you were my adopted son in this past life. Your father, which is my brother, was a pirate, and he was killed. So I raised you. And he told him all about his life. And he said, you even had 26 kills because we had battles together, And let me see what else. And then, and so he says, if you don't believe me, you can go to your library and look up my name and you'll find out all about it. So Alberto, what he did is he went to a big, gigantic bookstore and he asked, and he found out this guy's name. And he was, a well-known Chinese warlord, okay, from, I forgot what years, the year 600 or something like that. And he found his name, that he was also well-known as a warlord's assistant or a general or something like that, right? And he read all about himself and stuff like that, okay? And so Alberto was telling his wife all about this crazy story, right? And then poof, what plops up in his living room was an apport, okay? A sword, a Chinese sword. The wife was the one that discovered it. Remember, she's a PhD psychologist now, okay? So it was very, very heavy the way they described it. They took several pictures of it with a Polaroid camera. So you cannot fake a Polaroid. These are these pictures that take like a minute to develop, And so they showed me in their house. And then they said that sword had 26 notches to it, and it just dropped in their living room. And so they were carrying it, and they were, analyzing it, checking it, and then they 2 hours later, the sword disappears again. Okay, and then what happens later on is that then a jade statue appeared of this Chinese warlord. Okay, boom, right there in the living room couch, And then a couple of days later, it disappeared again. Okay. And then it came back. And they have it. They kept it. Alberto has accumulated hundreds of these different apports. Okay. That's just things that just plop in the living room. Several of them are, how should I say, Eastern, Buddhist, Taoist type of religious symbols that just plop down, metallic, that just plop in their living room. He one time, he's seen hundreds of UFOs. He and his wife, they have pictures of them too. Okay. The very first time was they went in 88, down to Peru to be with Sixto Paz. He was the founder of Grupo Rama. And this is the group that they're out there in the desert and they all meditate and they have their own protocol of fasting for 3 days and particular chanting of I forgot the formal name of it, but it's like and other types of verbiage that they use. And almost every time, these UFOs appear. And so the first time Alberto went there, this huge, gigantic UFO appeared, multiple UFOs. One time, they saw a light at a distance in the desert. So him and Sixto Paz alone went out there. Everyone else stayed behind. And it was one of these smaller crafts. He's it was phasing in and out of reality. That was less than a foot away from him. They thought it was like a Volkswagen or a car, a light that was coming right at them. And then they realized what it was, because it was right on top, right, not on top, but actually on the ground. They have pictures of UFOs out in the sky, very close. Lots of crazy experiences with this man. Then he had this whole relationship with this Haitian woman, okay, who claimed to be raised by ghosts and spirits. And let me just tell you some of these stories, okay? And again, this is also witnessed by the wife, confirmed by the daughter, who also has seen UFOs, okay? And lights in her room, spinning all around like a discotheque. Lots of experiences with the daughter as well. So basically, Alberto would go inside this Haitian lady's house. Before he got to the door, all the locks would be unlocked. The door would be swinging wide open. He would go inside. The door would close by itself, and the locks get put on again. Okay? The lady was in her living room. There was nobody behind the door. He says, "Come on, Alberto, come in." Okay? And then the lady had this doll, which was a spirit. The doll would be moving around. Okay? She would be feeding it food. The doll's mouth would be closing. Okay? One time, he and Rebecca were traveling to Orlando. Okay, and then all of a sudden, their car was like stalling, like 2 hours away, and he opened the hood. The doll was on the hood of the car. Okay, and then the doll, they heard a voice, both the wife and the man, saying the doll was that she had to get away because that Haitian lady was not letting her get out, and she wanted to go to Disney. Okay, to Orlando with them. Okay, and the doll was all full of like carbon and stuff like that. From the motor, from that stuff. And I mean, these are just a couple of examples. I mean, there was a human-looking being dressed in a white tunic that appeared right in front of Alberto in his living room. Okay, it says, "Alberto, you've been asking questions about death. What is death like?" And then all of a sudden, it gave him like a near-death experience to Alberto. He plopped out of his body. He saw his body underneath. He went through the tunnel. The whole works. And then and says, "Remember, when you die, Alberto, you got to go through the light. You got to go through the light. You can't stay back." There was another time where, with his wife was next to him, where this is the third story I've heard of this. Another one was a member of our board of directors, except he was a genius physicist. He understood the physics. Alberto had sort of like a big, gigantic Apple iPad that was like 3-dimensional, that was right in front of him, and it was scrolling all these physics equations. All these complex physics equations. And he was telling his wife, who couldn't see it, and he was telling him exactly what was going on. Then the wife was saying, "Communicate it with it. What does it want? What does it want?" And the whole time he was communicating with the wife, and she brought a pad. He would try to write down what some of those equations were and stuff like that. So after like 20 minutes, Alberto walked away. So I asked him, I said, "Alberto, why did you walk away?" He says, "Ray, I was getting bored. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a scientist. I don't know what this stuff was. And I just got bored." And he walked away. Well, the same thing happened more than 20 years before to one of the PhD physicists in our organization. Okay. 1961 or 63, I forgot which one it was. He was camping with his girlfriend, okay, out in California in a tent. And all of a sudden, this tablet appeared to him. Again, holographically, started putting all these physics equations in front of him. Now, he could understand it because he was a child prodigy in mathematics and physics, okay? And the way he explained it, he says, "Ray, there's these very, very famous equations that led to quantum physics. They're called Maxwell's field equations. So this is before quantum physics. So if you could imagine, and even before Albert Einstein, he said, if you could imagine getting Maxwell's field equations and Einstein using them and making a right-hand turn, this is Maxwell field equations and making a left-hand turn, like totally radical physics." And he understood it, okay? And then the way he explained it was that even at the level of a subatomic particle, there are mini black holes. Okay, and it was like the whole equation was being all spelled out for him, and he eventually, wrote all of that up. So, and then there was another man that talked the same thing about these physics equations appearing right in front of him in some type of holographic tablet. And then there's tons of people, hundreds of people that have gotten these physics downloads. But again, it didn't happen that way. It was just put into their heads, directly into their mind, these physics equations. And again, there were hundreds of people that received these physics downloads. And so anyway, I could go on and on and on with Alberto's stories. There's just nonstop stories that this man has had, and he still has them. But they've dissipated over the years. There was like a good 5 to 6 year window that they were like nonstop, and then after that they've like tuned down. Okay, but he still sees UFOs and orbs and things like that. There was one time that he came from a meditation group with these 3 friends, and this lady Martha sends me an email. He says, "Ray, you wouldn't believe me. We came out of the meditation group, and all of a sudden Alberto goes, 'Come here, come here,' and it was like a small UFO that had come down, and it was very, very close, a small UFO, and these 2 other elderly ladies saw it. Then all of a sudden they were watching it for a certain while. Then all of a sudden, shoop, it just shoots out to the sky." So, I mean, Alberto's still having, communicate. Oh, the other time he saw recently, this is about a month and a half ago, again, another human-looking being that he calls a master, dressed in white mushrooms. And he told me what it told him, and it communicated with him. But I just forgot that particular story. But what we discovered in our research study, the number one type of being that people are seeing is the energy being. Okay, that's at like 57%. The number 2 type of being were the human-looking beings. Okay, number 2. Number 3 was the short grays. Okay, that's at 51%. And again, the short grays, we're talking about 1,100 people. Okay, that have interacted with these short grays. The human-looking beings is almost 1,300. Okay, about 1,250. And then with the energy beings was over 1,500. So we're talking a lot of people, not 3, 4, or 5, or 6. And a good many of these people, these human-looking beings, were dressed in white monk's robes or Roman tunic. Okay, it's difficult for people to describe, exactly what it was, but they described it in their writings as either a white monk's robes or a Roman type of tunic. And so more people have had these paranormal experiences that I told you about than physical experience, much more. And the vast majority are the energy beings or the physical type of beings. So that's what we're trying to present in our documentary and in our second book.
Awesome. So we're coming into like the last, 3 or 4 minutes. And so we're finishing the conversation we've been having. That's been great with Rey Hernandez. He's been just insightful, and all of his experiences and of others and of the foundation. So co-founder of the Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, co-author of Beyond UFO, experiencer.org, consciousness and contact.org. So in closing, what would you tell people? What do you want people to know?
Yeah, what I would tell individuals is that we have chapter 1 of our first book. The name of our first book, which you can get on Amazon, is Beyond UFOs, The Science of Consciousness and Contact with Non-Human Intelligence. It weighs 3.5 pounds. It's 820 pages. Okay, you can get chapter 1 of that, which is 120 pages, for free. We also have a chapter by Dr. Joseph Burks and Preston Dennett on medical healings. As I said before, we've had over 550 people that have had medical healings by UFO-related non-human intelligence. We also have a couple of one chapter by Dr. Rudy Shields as well. All of this is available for free for you to be able to download from our website. So go to our website, consciousnessandcontact.org. Read these free chapters that we have there, especially chapter 1, which is the summary of our research study. And if you like it, buy the book. We also have a Kindle version of it. From now until December 15th, we're having a special for the Kindle version. It's $9.95. Okay, so you could download the entire 820-page book for less than $10. And if you're interested in this phenomenon as well, and our approach to it, which is a consciousness-based approach, also be on the lookout for Volume 2. Volume 2 is going to have 2 separate books. Actually, it's Volume 2 and Volume 3, except that's going to have a slightly different title. It's going to be Beyond Materialism. Beyond Materialism, the science of consciousness and contact with non-human intelligence. That should be published by this coming August of 2019.
If you had, let me just throw something out there. Which of the books were you going to have just average people with experiences? What book were you going to put that in?
Oh, that's in our very first book.
Oh, okay.
Beyond UFOs. And as I said, you could read chapter 1. That's for free. And then the chapter on medical healings. And altogether, they're like 120 pages. And if you like it, go to the internet, either get the Kindle version of it for $10 or order the book itself, which is 820 pages. It's on Amazon.
I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, and then the doctorates are writing the second book. Is that correct?
Yes, we're having Volume 2 and Volume 3. And the first one is being written by all these academics. And then the other one is being written by experiencers, like, okay, you've been having these experiences for 40 years. What the hell is going on? Okay. Can you explain it? And at least it's your perspective. It's your hypotheses. Not that you've got the final answer, but it's like, okay, this is from my perspective, what the hell is going on and how it can be explained.
Okay, sounds good. Hey, Ray, I just want to thank you so much for actually being on the show today. We're just kind of closing up for like the last minute. This is Carrying Stones and Digging Holes, and I'm on Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, the host, every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can go to revolutionradio.com, and you can click schedule, and you schedule or Studio A, and you can find me in the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Click on the B, and you can see a bio of me and about the show. And also, if you want to contact me, you can probably there's information there on where to contact me at. Anyway, if anybody's interested in getting a hold of Ray, they can get a hold of him through theexperiencer.org and leave him a message. And maybe you have some input that you want to put into their book, or you have an experience that you want to write and send into them. And so maybe it'll get in somewhere where people in the world can read it. So anyway, I just want to thank you for your work, and thanks for coming on, Ray. I really appreciate it, and it really helps people, the more that, we talk about these things.
Most definitely. Again, I want to remind everyone, our website is consciousnessandcontact.org. It's all one word. Consciousnessandcontact.org.
Yes, that's it. All right, everybody. We'll see you next week. Have a great week. And thanks, Ray, so much.
You're very welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Now a holiday message to our favorite people in all the world, our listeners. Revolution Radio is you. Now, thanks to your continuing support, Revolution Radio will embark on its 6th year, bigger and better than ever. You, the listeners, have made Revolution Radio what it is, the #1 commercial-free, listener-supported talk radio station on the web and in the world. With 24 hours of live programming, 92 hosts on 2 astounding networks, Studio A and Studio B, delivering directly to you the most cutting-edge information available. In fact, you, the listeners, have gone on to be some of our most popular radio hosts. You, the listener, offer feedback that molds our programming to appeal to our worldwide audience. In fact, you, the listener, provide us with eyes and ears on the ground to give us the inside scoop on stories the mainstream media fears to touch, reporting about newsworthy events in your area, and you, the listener, are the lifeblood of this station. And we thank you for being such a treasured member of our Revolution Radio family. And so this holiday season, from all of us to all of you, have a happy and safe holiday season, and let's make this new year a success once again together. Thank you.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener